I've been on YouTube for just about 7 years now, and in this time I've talked about a lot of horror movies and a lot of horror series, things like that, Nightmare on Elm Street, the Child's Play series, Friday the 13th, Halloween, all that good stuff. But I've actually never talked about the Saw movies, which is strange because they are really popular. And there's a good reason for that. The reason is I actually haven't seen all of them. I've only seen the first four. Um, and I don't know. For me, there's going to be spoilers for the first Saw movie, the first four Saw movies, if you haven't seen them. But for me, definitely the first three were quite solid. But then, like, they made a big mistake, in my opinion, by killing off Jigsaw and Tobin Bell. At the end of the third movie, then it becomes about the people following him and the tapes he left behind and the flashbacks in part four and all that stupid shit. So I don't know if what five, six, seven, and there's an upcoming eighth one, I believe. I don't know if any of that's worth it, but I'll say the first three are solid. So I at least want to talk about the very first one today, the one that kind of changed the game, and that's Saw, 2003's horror film that came out of nowhere from James Wan, who of course went on to be the modern go-to guy for horror. Of course, he's made quite a bit of an impression in this genre, needless to say. But here we are, 2004. This little kind of almost like unassuming movie about these two guys in a basement washroom somewhere, stuck trying to figure out the sadistic puzzle of a crazed killer with a method behind his madness. So I think it's a really good movie, a good horror movie. Um, and I would say its place in horror is, I think, necessary and appropriate because you got to think back to this time. This is 2004. All these franchises have pretty much died down. We had kind of the dying breaths of the Halloween franchise with Halloween Resurrection with Buster Rhymes, Trick or Treat, motherfucker. Jason goes to fucking space. This actually came out. This is worth noting. The first Saw 2004, the original. This came out the same weekend as Seed of Chucky, which if you've seen my review of that, I'm not a big fan of Seed of Chucky. It would take until very recently, 2013, with Curse of Chucky to kind of, I don't know, bring the series back to goodwill. But anyway, we had all these old franchises dying down, and so we're kind of, I don't know, fatigued by those. We need something fresh, something new, and I suppose that Jigsaw, this killer, really fit the bill for that because he's a little bit different, a little bit interesting, and I think he has the criteria for an effective killer in one of these movies. One, he has kind of, quote unquote, his own mask, which is really this puppet which has his voice and does the talking for him. And it helps greatly that Tobin Bell has a wonderful, creepy voice that he puts on. I want to play a game. Things like that. We see the creepy little clown coming in on a bike and stuff. It's really good, really effective, and I think a pretty iconic design in that little jigsaw clown. And this killer, the unique kind of spin on it is that Jigsaw doesn't necessarily, for all technicalities considered, he doesn't actually kill his victims. He puts them in a set of circumstances where, if they play along with him, if they play the game, they can survive. If they make false moves, they will end up killing themselves. So that's kind of the, I don't know, twist to it. He's not just your average serial killer running around with a knife and going around and slashing people up. There's somewhat of a method, and that really is. I mean, as we learn a little bit more about Jigsaw, not just through the sequels, but this film alone, he's a cancer patient. He's facing death, and he sees the world around him, and he sees that not everybody is appreciating that precious gift of life. So I suppose he takes it upon himself to find the sinners of the world and to teach them valuable lessons about how precious the gift of life is and things like that. So I don't know, death therapy. A lot of people will say this movie in some ways rips off Seven and its use of the seven deadly sins, and you can definitely see the influence there. But what no one ever really brings up is that this movie is a total ripoff of What About Bob. As you may recall, at the end of What About Bob, the Richard Dreyfuss character, he ties up Bob, Bill Murray, to a bomb, and he tries to get out of the ropes, and he succeeds, and he's like, it's death therapy, it's a brilliant plan, and things like that. Anyway, it's just a joke, but maybe they had it in the back of their heads when they were writing this. I don't know. But with this movie, I mean, and with this series, you'll kind of get the criticisms of it that it's the favorite phrase used, torture porn, which, I mean, as the series progressed, you can definitely see that as movies kind of influenced by it in this particular kind of frame of time, stuff like Hostel, but whatever else. I mean, there are movies where like people are just being tortured and bloody guts just for its own sake, with not too much substance and things like that. But I'll give this first film in the series credit in that it certainly has a plot, and I don't know, by the standards of even like the second one that would come a year later, Saw 2, which I think might actually be my favorite of the ones I've watched, at least. I don't know, it seems tame by comparison. It doesn't seem like it's too over the top with the gore or anything like that. Not a showcase of let's just see so much gore. There is, a solid plot. And what I'm impressed with is that they're able to accomplish quite a bit with this plot and unravel things about the characters and their motivations and their deep, dark secrets throughout the course of this movie. So essentially, though it goes out into the world quite a bit, it's just these two guys. The doctor, played by Gary Elwes, and Adam, who's kind of this seedy private investigator. They're locked in a room together. They have to find a way to get out and survive, basically, and they're kind of working with each other, but secretly against each other. Jigsaw is giving them their own individual clues and motivations and things like that. So it is this psychological thriller, in addition to being kind of a horror movie with good kind of blood and guts kind of moments to it. Of course, we have in the outside world, we see the police procedural aspects of it, where we get to learn a little bit more about Jigsaw, and Danny Glover playing the obsessed detective hot on his trail. All that's really good. And I think everything kind of comes together in a good and satisfying and surprising way in the end, because I saw it. I didn't see it in theaters when it first came out, but I saw it when it first came to video. And I do remember being surprised by the ending, because, of course, we have the red herring of the film, which is Zepp, the orderly in the hospital, who is revealed to be the one who has kidnapped Dr. Malcolm's... is it Dr. Malcolm? No, I'm thinking of Jurassic Park. Anyway, Dr. Lawrence, that's it. Lawrence, what, of Arabia? That's the doctor. He's revealed to be the one who kidnaps his wife and daughters as part of the game. But in that moment, in watching it for the first time, if you kind of think back to the first time watching it and kind of what you thought, you kind of think, oh, okay, so that's it. That's the crazy killer. That's the Jigsaw killer, right? Well, no. He's put Zepp into the game as well. He's put a poison in him and forced him to play along in order to, see what he would do in order to survive. How far would he go himself and things like that. And of course, during this whole time in the film with the two men in the bathroom, there's a man in the middle of the room who we believe is dead, blew his brains out because he had poisoned him, but in fact it is actually Jigsaw, who has a prosthetic on the top of his head. I guess is really, really good at keeping still and not breathing. But, he comes up, and then in the movie, like, game over, kabloom, door closed, screaming. So, good and surprising, though maybe a little bit far-fetched. And I'll say for one thing, when we think about kind of the concept of the series as a whole, I don't know. I don't quite know if I buy the whole Jigsaw thing. Like, would there really be people who really believe in Jigsaw's teachings and methods so much so that they would follow his work, as we see with the Shawnee Smith character who appears in the next one. But by the same token, he's not like he's not preying victim on one, innocent people, two, well-adjusted people. Like, you'll notice he preys on criminals and drug addicts and things like that. So they're very vulnerable. The kind of methods of Jigsaw and his ways of manipulation are not unlike, say, like a cult leader who will bring people into his cult and believe in his teachings and follow his crazy rules. So I don't know. You kind of have to suspend your disbelief a little bit, but maybe not too much. But I don't know. Life is precious. I mean, great. You're trying to teach us that through your sick and twisted games. That's cool. Anyway, I think it's a solid movie. I think again the first three I really like, but this is the one that started it all. This is the classic. Uh, it's a really remarkable achievement when you consider how small this budget was. Like, it's a ridiculous budget. I don't know how much it is. It doesn't necessarily show. Like, sometimes there will be parts where, like, for example, there's one part in the movie that always bothers me. Right near the end, there's like the chase, right? The car chase between Zepp and the detective Danny Glover, and you can just tell they're both like in cars with like a black background, and they're just moving the camera a little bit so it looks like they're driving, but they probably couldn't afford to do any kind of like stunt driving work or make it like intense or anything like that. It's a little bit cheesy. But I don't know. They created this mold for this series and set this template, I guess is the best way to put it, for things to follow for these sick and twisted games where, I don't know, torture porn, if you want to put it that way, ensues. So, Saw, James Wan, good job. Good job, everybody, with Saw. I really like it. So, I don't know if you're curious at all for all these years hearing my words on at least the first Saw movie. I think it's a pretty damn good movie. So, that's my review of Saw. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to tune in for more. We're still doing, or trying to do, 31 Days of Horror on the channel. New horror movie reviews every day. Comment, rate, subscribe, all that good stuff. And until next time, stay scared.